The beginnings of television. All right, so let's think about the title for a second. Be making a prediction about what this passage will be about. The beginnings of television. So maybe probably about when television first was invented and maybe when people first started watching TV in their houses. All right, here we go. Are your parents old enough to remember watching Howdy Doody Time? Can your grandparents recall dramas they saw on Studio One? These are some of the better known shows from the very earliest days of television. The capacity to send and receive moving pictures via airwaves was developed years earlier, but television only began showing up in people's homes in about 1947. World War II, which had halted their production, ended in 1945. These very early TVs had screens that were only a few inches wide, but people snapped them up as fast as they could be made. What kinds of shows were available? Howdy Doody was a children's show with puppets, live characters, and a host named Buffalo Bob. Studio One featured full-length dramas in which such stars as James Dean and Warren Beatty made early appearances. Both of these shows debuted in the 1940s. So did an early version of the news show Meet the Press. Most pioneering television programs were live. This meant if actors forgot their lines or a prop got knocked over, the audience got to see it anyway. Since some of the most popular early shows were comedies, the mistakes could make the programs even funnier. Did Milton Berle in the Texaco Star Theater really mean to fall off that piano bench? Was Imogene Coca's hat in a Your Show of Shows skit really supposed to catch in a closing door? Since the stars laughed right along with the audience, you could never be sure. All right, so this is about the beginnings of TV in people's homes and the first shows on television. First paragraph is definitely about asking us if our parents or grandparents can remember the first TV shows. The second paragraph is about how TV was developed. So it sounds like it was developed years before it was showed up in people's homes, but kind of World War II, money had to go to the war, so they couldn't keep producing TVs. Early TVs were really small, and they were really popular. All right, so then it talks about in the third paragraph what kinds of shows were popular, the very first TV shows ever. So children's shows and dramas. So same stuff as now, really. And this all happened in the 1940s. And a news show. So news, comedies, kids shows, and dramas, kind of like today. All right, the last paragraph talks about people didn't really, everything was live TV. Nothing was pre-recorded. So if there was a mistake, people never knew if it was like meant to be a mistake or if it was part of the script. So kind of interesting that there was only live TV. All right. Mark the main idea. So on a Google Doc, you are going to write number 1 and you're going to write what the main idea is, which statement is too big and broad to be a main idea, and which statement is too narrow and specific. All right, A, most early TV programs were shown live. Television became widespread after World War II. Early TV programs were a mix of children's shows, comedy, dramas, and news. Okay, so you're going to choose which one is main idea, which one is too detailed, maybe just about one detail of the story, and which one is too big and broad to be a main idea. Number 2, this passage focuses on some of the earliest television shows, a history of the development of television, why television became popular, differences between TV and radio programs. Number 3, shows like Studio One and Meet the Press started on television in the early 1940s, the late 1940s, the early 1950s, the late 1950s. Number 4, this passage suggests that early comedy shows used slapstick and silly visual jokes, were not terribly funny, usually involved two characters talking to each other, were not on the air for too many years. The writer tries to capture your interest in the first paragraph by mentioning several stars, describing a dramatic event or incident, comparing and contrasting two programs, asking specific questions. Number 6, debuted means, I know it's spelled like debuted, but it's debuted, means first publicly appeared, ended, became popular, entertained. Remember that if you don't know an answer to one of these, you need to go back and reread and find the part. For example, on number 3, if you're not sure when Studio One and Meet the Press started, please go back and find the part that discusses that. In fact, I see a number right here that says this, so maybe I would reread that, okay, to find out when it started or debuted. All right.